Steve McQueen and Paul Newman race against time as one tiny spark becomes a night of blazing suspense. The Towering Inferno.
It's out of control, and it's coming your way.
20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers present Irwin Allen's production of The Towering Inferno. Steve McQueen, Paul Newman, William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Fred Astaire, Susan Blakely, Richard Chamberlain, Jennifer Jones, O.J. Simpson, Robert Vaughn, and Robert Wagner. The Towering Inferno.
Those people are going to die up there if something's not done.
I want you out of here.
So you can stop worrying about me. What about me down there worrying about you?
I'll never let you go anywhere without me again.
I'll be back with the whole fire department.
The Towering Inferno.
Set me down on the scenic elevator.
Now, the producer of the Poseidon Adventure brings you more spectacle, more stars, more suspense than you've ever seen in one motion picture. Steve McQueen is the fire chief. Paul Newman is the architect. Step by step, floor by floor, this is a race against time to save hundreds of people trapped in a night of blazing suspense as the world's tallest building becomes the Towering Inferno. The Towering Inferno.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Victor once again. Stand by, please.
On the streets of San Francisco, Irwin Allen, the producer of The Poseidon Adventure, is leading an army of filmmakers in building his newest blockbuster, The Towering Inferno.
What we're going to try to do on this shot is get a battalion of engines coming from our left, our right, behind us, heading down Pine Street, getting them all converging to indicate that they're coming from all parts of the city in order to attack the fire on the world's largest building.
All right, please, here we go. Stand by.
Turn on the lights.
Here we go.
Mike. Now, cameras ready. In position. Get ready. Forward.
All right, go, Mac, go.
Stand by. All right, light your pilot.
They're in the works now.
All right, anytime now. All right, bring it up. Bring it up. Uphill. Okay. Too much smoke. Half that amount. Take your fire down.
Yeah.
Set, go.
Okay. Rolling.
Roll the cameras. Speed. All right, Susan. Action. He turned away. He's at the door. He looks back. He smiles. He runs. Men on fire. Oh, stand.
You are witnessing the birth of a major motion picture.
Flowers. Cut. Print it. Put it out. Susan, are you all right?
It has been suggested that the movie blockbuster
Absolutely fabulous.
is the new art form of the 20th century.
All right. Once more.
If this is true, Irwin Allen is one of its leading artists, an activist
Where are the fire
producer.
chiefs? There isn't one chance in 10 billion that this flame that comes out here, which we're going to test right now, will creep along the wall. All right.
Last year, he made the Poseidon Adventure. This year, he's building another blockbuster with a cast of stars that includes Steve McQueen, Paul Newman, William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Fred Astaire, Richard Chamberlain, Jennifer Jones, O.J. Simpson, Robert Vaughn, and Robert Wagner.
Cut.
For the Poseidon Adventure, Irwin Allen recreated the Queen Mary and
Fellas,
capsized
lock
it.
it off, please. All right? Gentlemen, we go.
This year,
Right.
he'll construct the world's tallest building
A little more smoke.
and burn it down for the Towering Inferno.
Stand by. And action!
During the dedication ceremonies for the world's tallest building, a fire breaks out on the 81st floor. setting off a spectacular adventure of escape and rescue.
Put him out. Go in and get him. Go get him.
But the actual filming of the story is only part of an extremely complicated and lengthy process.
Okay, cut it. Print it. It's beautiful.
Helicopters were used extensively in the rescue during these fires. In Bogota, they used the president's helicopter. Notice the debris that's falling out of the building.
This is Paul Newman's private offices and as well as his living quarters. Up there is William Holden's main offices. He's the head of the operation. And there'll be secretaries and receptionists down here. Everything burns here.
But the thing is the control of smoke and the control of flame. That's the most important thing for our unit.
Otherwise, goodbye stage, goodbye studio. You know what you ought to do? Can we get some systems set up where we suck the smoke out?
All right, run a picture bell, that is.
All right.
Okay. Right. Well, now you see Apple, take two.
Hey, marker.
Okay, right action.
I want to see all your floor plans, 81 through 85. Gotcha. This is what I'm worried about over here. See those beams.
Chief, 81 has been evacuated.
Cut. Okay, let's try again.
The only thing is they can't come down feet first. Because always having the things like that, their knees bend and hit them in the head and break their jaw.
Absolutely quiet, please. Hold the fire down.
Stand by. Who's got the hose in case she catches fire?
Bring that fire down now. That's hot as hell. Take it down.
Take it down.
What's the matter? Is he all right?
Is he all right, Paul?
Yeah. All right.
All right, here we go. Picture, please.
Running out of time. Roll the cameras. And action.
Got 30 seconds. 25. 20. 15. 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Put him out. Go in and get him. Go get him. Hadn't quit it. That's the one.
Oh, my God.
John Guillermin, of course, was 20th Century Fox's choice to direct the film.
I thought he was quite amazing because he had a huge, the organization of it was like being the general in an army, for God's sakes. It was just huge.
John and I had a good relationship. Thank God for that, because I've often said that a cameraman was really only about as good as the director he was working with.
Irwin wanted to direct the movie and the studio wouldn't let him. They wanted to have a director that had done a lot of films. He ended up talking the studio into letting him do the action sequences. So that's how he directed almost, I would say probably 45% of the film.
Basically, the acting part of the film was directed by John Guillermin while Irwin was doing the fire sequences on a different stage in 20th Century Fox.
Everybody had to know what everybody else was doing, and you had to keep the screen direction right. So I would have to check with John Guillermin and pick his brain as to how he was blocking out the shots where he would do the dramatic units. And then, knowing what Irwin had to do in the action unit, I had to make the transition, because at one point, John would stop this unit, then they would go on to move to something else, and then Irwin would come in with his crew, and they pick up from there.
And they were complete opposites in my mind. Absolute complete opposites. John was a very quiet, easy-spoken man. If he showed any temper at all, it was in a nice, quiet way that he wanted something done and do it now and so forth. Where Irwin was just the opposite. Irwin, when Irwin walked on a set, everybody knew he was there, you know.
He was good as a director, but Guillermin, in all honesty, had a different instinct as a director.
His relation with Paul Newman, I thought, was really, really interesting to watch on the set. They'd get in a knockdown, drag-out argument before every one of Paul's scenes. They'd suddenly start arguing about, well, I think it is. No, it's got to be this way. No, John, it's got to be, well, Paul, but, you know. And then suddenly he'd say, action. And Paul would be in the scene and do the scene and be terrific. And I suddenly twigged to the fact that this is how Paul liked to warm up. I don't know if he did this on other films, but on this film, he would pick a fight with the director, and the director totally knew what was happening. And then he'd slide right in without a pause into actually shooting the scene. Fascinating.
John always had a pipe in the corner of his mouth. I don't know whether the pipe was lit or not, but he did a lot of his directing with a microphone, and he would be talking out of the side of his mouth with a British accent, and the pipe was on the other side, so it's sometimes a little hard to understand John.
Lots of times he would just walk around with a pipe in his mouth. And we were in the process of discussing a scene, and the assistant director came over and said to him, Mr. Guillermin, Irwin Allen is coming on the set. He wants to talk to you. And Irwin came on the set with an entourage of about 10 or 12 people. And so he walked over, and they had a discussion. And he came back, and he walked up to Bob and I. We were just sort of waiting. And he stood there. Irwin had told him he wasn't moving the camera enough. And he was shooting the film in a certain style that he thought had been agreed to. He was so upset that he bit the stem of the pipe right in half.
One thing I appreciated about John and Irwin was they tend to give you your head. They give you leeway. You can do things. And, you know, it's not like it's written in the book, you got to do it this way. Or this is the way I'm going to tell you to do it. It was none of that. It was always a camaraderie of talking about the shots, talking about laying out things, and then going ahead and doing it.
John Guillermin was wonderful. Wonderful director. I felt very fortunate, and I think the whole cast did, to have him.
They only had 6 so-called star dressing rooms. So Irwin had built 15 star dressing rooms that sat outside the soundstage and were identical in every way.
They were very elegant, and they had showers and beds and sitting rooms and everything you could want.
And my door opened onto Bill Holden's door. So being a 3-month shoot, I got to know Bill Holden very, very well, because every day when we weren't shooting, we were sitting on in our door frames looking at each other on this little street outside from our dressing rooms.
One of the things that really stands out was Bill Holden. I mean, Bill was kind of wonderful because everybody seemed to have friends of friends that wanted to get on the set. And if visitors came on the set, he'd make a point to walk up and say hello, allowing you to introduce them to him. And he made everybody feel pretty special.
I was very anxious to see Fred Astaire because I had worshipped him as a young man. And Fred came to everyday shooting dressed immaculately with beautiful tie, shirt, immaculate blazer, and $1,000 shoes. And he really looked like a movie star should look.
The interesting thing about Fred is that he spent an awful lot of time with the extras and the crew. It seemed to be more time with them than he did with his fellow luminaries. And I thought that showed him to be a very unpretentious fellow.
There was a bedroom scene with Faye Dunaway, and Faye at that time really was very modest and was very careful and wore appropriate pajamas and so forth. And Paul, of course, just stripped down to his shorts in front of 40 or 50 people on the set, got in bed, and Faye took quite a while to get there. And you could tell when she walked up to the bed, she was a little timid and unsure somewhat. So Paul flipped the blankets back, and he had a pair of cowboy boots with spurs on, and he clicked the spurs and said, well, Faye, is this kinky enough for you? And it just absolutely just shattered the set. Everybody just went crazy on the set.
I recall that Steve and Paul were pranksters on the set, and they were always kind of fooling around like young kids with each other.
They had a good time doing the movie. They brought a lot of humor to the set. There were several outtakes as a result of some of the comments.
The fireman's hat that they had, when he went in for his fitting, Steve McQueen said, no, I want the brim. The brim should be higher. It should be further out. I want it changed, I want it moved like this and this. And they looked at him and they said, but we've already got all of the extras. It'd be like $50,000 to change these hats. He said, change them. And you know what? He looked great with that hat. And you know what? That's what it's about. People want to see stars looking like that.
It was one of those movies that even when the actors weren't working, it was like they left to come on the set to see what Irwin was blowing up next or what he was doing.
There's something called a breeches buoy, which is a thing that they run up the side of a building and you get in it, and then they suspend it and drop you down.
Get the hell out of there!
Richard Chamberlain pushed me out of the breeches buoy, and I went falling to the ground.
They wanted to film you coming down. They wanted to see your face, I guess. And I was up for it. Everybody else was doing it. And it looked Okay, you fall on this big soft thing. That was really scary because we had to fall 20 feet something. That's a fair fall. And then land on these wonderful pillows. But if you land wrong, of course, you can still hurt yourself.
Certainly, I was more than impressed by the fire scenes when they would, these stunt people would light themselves on fire, and it was always a big deal. All of us came out to watch, and I would just freak out. I just couldn't watch. I start screaming, I had to leave the room. It was horrible to see people light themselves on fire. And I guess it wasn't done a lot back then.
I wanted to do the stunt myself. They wouldn't let me. I was very disappointed. I wanted to go out that window into this huge airbag. I thought this would be so great. And I kept saying, I want to do it. I want to do it. Irwin said, no, you can't do it. I said, well, what's the worst thing that'll happen? He said, you break your neck. I said, oh, well, I suppose that's possible, but I think I can make it. The sequence where my character gets ready to jump, the fire was literally all around me, and everyone was on the other side of it. And it had to come towards her in order to justify the movement out. But it was a little dicey there for a split second. Got very hot, really hot, in that last split second, before they went with the stuff and put the fire out.
Towering Inferno was a film ahead of its time as far as combining all the different types of special effects out there.
This is before anything you're doing today. No digital, no super duper this or that. We're just the old-fashioned way of doing it.
Where you combine the live action to the CG world, computer graphic world, and you also using miniatures. You combine all the tools that you need to create a great film.
You had the concept of building or making the audience believe that we were building or had just completed building the world's tallest office building.
Yet another landmark for this great city.
And that building, on the night of its opening, catches fire.
It's about a whole tower on fire and people having to deal with problems that are occurring and have to come up with solutions.
Here's our problem. The fire's lapping here, it's going up through the window.
It was an involved picture in that it had a number of units. There was the special effects unit, there was the action unit, there was the principal photography unit, and each of these had to be designed carefully so that they would stand up by themselves and that they could be properly blended one to another. I looked for the best of the effects people, and Bill Abbott, who's been with me for almost 20 years and has won 8 Academy Awards for special effects, was my #1 choice because we knew there were going to be an unusual amount of effects.
Special effects supervisor main job is to not only create all the effects and hire a proper team of guys to do all the effects for you, but also to keep safety in mind the whole time, and also to work editorially with the stunt coordinator, the director, and in the editorial room, cut together and tell the story.
Fire is a funny thing to photograph. It can look awfully fake or it can look darn good. Also, what people realize, there's many different colors in fire. We shot tests. We had terrific special effects guys.
You had the miniature unit, which L.B. Abbott, Bill Abbott, who was a former director of effects at Fox and went into retirement. Irwin wouldn't let him retire, kept getting him back. And he was going to handle all the miniature buildings, and we had miniature helicopters.
To tackle something like Tower Inferno is actually so immense that you have to basically take the problem and break it down scene by scene, small pieces at a time, so that it doesn't seem to be so overwhelming.
What floor do you keep your plans on? 79, my office. That's good. That's 2 floors below the fire.
When I did the storyboards, I would sit down with Bill Kraber, the production designer, Ward Preston, the art director, or L.B. Abbott, the special effects person, who had to kind of match what Paul may have been doing in special effects, such as the sequence where Robert Wagner or Susan Flannery are trapped in that suite.
Turn your face away.
There was a sequence where Robert and I was standing at the door, and there's supposed to be a big explosion, and they had the camera there, and Irwin was directing. And he said, okay, I'm going to clap my hands, and you'll have this big reaction. So I said to him, well, that's it? Going to clap your hands? And he said, yeah. I said, well, don't you have something that'll make some sort of a sound effect, that we can really be startled by? They brought this machine in that made this incredible noise, which then scared the holy hell out of me.
Every film has its own problems. In the case of Towering Inferno, you were dealing with various different fire effects, explosions, water effects, with actors running around, with miniature buildings, the big sets and everything, and you had to marry it together. And a lot of the scenes were filmed against a blue screen, which would be composited later on with a miniature version of the building, which Vanderveer Photo Effects under L.B. Abbott's direction composited. Of the miniature buildings, they had 2 different sizes. They did the upper 30 stories in 1.5-inch scale, which was about 65 feet high. And then they had the entire building, which was 1/2-inch scale, and that was about 70 feet high.
You can enhance the building by shooting up, and so you really don't know exactly what's the total height distance of it, but you're looking up into a night sky.
Bill Abbott was the special effects cameraman. He did the blue screen work, and it was quite a bit of it. The elevator shafts were blue screen, and the shots out the window, that was blue screen down there.
It was done so well, put together with the live action, that your mind, as the audience sees it, really believes that you are there and you're experiencing exactly what those people are experiencing at the time.
Never thought that a thing like this could happen.
I don't think you could say at that moment you thought you were ahead of time, because you were doing what you do at that time. We didn't know what was coming. I sure didn't. And the production value on that picture is, I'm amazed yet. It was 30 years ago, and I look at this picture, I go, my God, look what we did.
There were the thousands of craftsmen, skilled people who spent an entire lifetime learning the secrets of making motion pictures. I'm able to bring them together and do it. There's no false sense of humility here, because I'm not a humble man, and I know my contribution, but I also know the great contribution made by all the other people, those that are named as stars, and those people who are in the background. And to them I owe very special applause.